सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। ॐ श्रीराधाकृष्णाय नमः। ॐ श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। Batteries. Thank you. Okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome back everyone, and welcome also to the people watching the classes online later on. Thank you, Manish. Double A. Thank you. The batteries had full power in the morning. Now they don't have any power. Like many of us, wake up in the morning and then it starts going down. Okay. Kakkalu nalang kriyate, drishta drishtartha sadhana patiyan, amuya kanthastitaya, Prashnottara Ratnamalika, Kim danam anakangsham, Kim mitram, yo nivarayati papat, kolankaraha, Sheelam, Kim vachamandanam, Satyam, Vidyut vilasita chapalam kim, Durjanas sangatir Kulashila nishprapangake, Kalikale api, Sajjana eva, Chintamaniriva durlabham miha kim, Kathayami tatchaturbhadram, Kim tatvadanti, bhuyo vidhuta tamasa visheshena, Danam priyavaksahitam, Jnanam agarvam, Kshamanvitam shauryam, Vittam tyaga sametam, Durlabham etat chaturbhadram, Kim shocyam, Karpanyam, Sati vibhave kim prashastam, sati vibhave kim prashastam, audaryam. Kah pujya vidvabhihi, kah pujya vidvabhihi, swabhavatas sarvada vinito yaha, swabhavatas sarvada vinito yaha. So we saw up to here last time what is to be revered by the, or who is to be revered, who is to be respected by the learned, and swabhavataha sarvada vinitaha, the one yaha, the one who is always humble, who is always not conceited with his intelligence or learning. And we saw the story of Uddalaka and his son Shvetaketu from the Chandogya Upanishad, where the son has a lot of pride and arrogance that comes from his study of the Vedas. And I I gave the reference of a PhD, and I realized I know PhD is a very hard, arduous study. So no disrespect to all the PhDs in the room and those who are watching online. So it was just to show that along with a lot of learning and skill can come a lot of pride and arrogance, and that is not what we want to cultivate. Kah kula kamala dineshaha, kah kula kamala dineshaha, sati guna vibhave piyo namraha, sati guna vibhave piyo namraha. So kaha kula kamala dineshaha. Kaha dinesha. Dinesha means sun. Sanskrit is very, very nice. Obviously, it's a very nice language. Dina Isha, the Lord of the day. So that is the name for the sun, the one who literally makes our day. So Dinesha, who is the sun? For who? Kula Kamala, for the lotus. Kamala means lotus, and Kula means lineage. So what does it mean? Just like the sun, when the sun shines, the lotus flower blooms. So just like the sun makes the lotus flower bloom, who makes the Kula, the family or the community, bloom or prosper? And the answer is Sati guna vibhava api yaha namraha. Yaha, the one who, Sati guna vibhave, the one who, even though has great, vibhava, great or powerful gunas, qualities, like the sun, api namraha, is extremely humble or reverential or kind. In the prior verse, we saw the word vinitaha. Vinitaha, who is humble, who is not conceited. So why is such a person compared to the sun? Just as a metaphor, so the sun is constantly shining, gives us life, makes the world prosper, and obviously without the sun, none of us would be here on this planet. Similarly, if a person who has great power, like the sun, and he's giving generously, he or she gives generously without asking back. What do we give the sun in return? What do we give the sun in return? We actually make the planet worse with all our not being environmentally conscious. So we don't give the sun anything in return for the sun giving us this life that we can live. So similarly, a person who gives without asking is compared to the sun. And there is this story in the Puranas of a king whose name was Ambarisha. He was a very powerful emperor. So king versus emperor, king has one kingdom, emperor has multiple kingdoms. And he ruled, a very just king, had a lot of wealth, had a lot of power, and he was an ardent follower of devotee of Lord Vishnu. And many people observe this Ekadashi fast or tapas as a form of fasting, as a form of tapas. So he had he was observing this fast for a year. Like on a particular day, you have to do it. And just as he was about to eat, to break the fast, this sage, Durvasa, and some of you might have heard of this name, this sage was known for his temper. And don't ask me how a sage can have a temper. This is a Puranic story. So he was known to get very angry and throw curses very easily. So he came to visit the king. And according to the tradition, obviously the king had to welcome a Brahmana, a guest, couldn't eat before feeding the king. And the sage comes, this Durvasa comes to the kingdom, and he's waiting. He says he'll get his bhiksha, but he said before that, I need to go and bathe in the river. So Durvasa goes to the river to take a bath, and the king is waiting and waiting and waiting. He's not come back. And the time, so apparently the fast has to be broken at a particular time for it to be meaningful. So he's waiting for the king to come, but the time for breaking the fast is slipping by. So what he does, he takes a sip of water. Technically, that's not really breaking the fast because he's not eaten anything. Somehow, this Durvasa, while bathing in the river, finds out about this, and he gets really angry. And these rishis had a lot of power, so he creates a demon. And a demon or a Rakshasa who goes, of course, these are all Puranic stories, so you have to take all this with a grain of salt. The lesson that the moral of the story we're going to come to. So he creates this demon to go and kill the king, King Ambarisha. So as the demon is going to kill the king, of course, the king being a devotee of Lord Vishnu, what happens? Lord Vishnu throws his Sudarshana chakra, it kills the demon, and then the chakra goes after Durvasa, the rishi, and he gets really scared. He runs to Shiva and Brahmaji, and says, please save me. So do you think Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma would save Durvasa? No, because gods knew their place in politics. So they would not interfere in what Vishnu has done. So they tell him, you have to go back to Vishnu and get an answer ask him to save you. So he goes to Vishnu, pleads to Vishnu, and so Vishnu says, I can't save you. So just look at this, that Durvasa's power was so strong in creating that demon that even Vishnu could not save him. So he says, you have to go back to the person who you wanted the demon to attack. So you have to go back to the king. So this guy goes back, I shouldn't say guy, he was a rishi. This Durvasa goes back to the king, he falls at his feet and says, please save him. This king, remember, very powerful, very wealthy, very dharmic. He could have easily gloated and say, look what you did, look what your actions, look where they have brought you. The sage is at the king's feet, and instead the king is just taken aback. He's aghast that this great rishi has fallen at his feet. And he's very humble, and he says, he just almost jumps back when the Durvasa falls at his feet. And then he offers him a meal, bhiksha. The whole time, Durvasa was running about from one loka to the other, looking for Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. The king had not broken his fast. The king did not eat because he was following the traditions of the Kula lineage. The traditions is that you have to serve a Brahmana who comes to your home first. So that shows the humility. So this king, even though was so powerful, the metaphor is like the Dinesha, like the sun, he was very humble, namraha, and very reverential, even to somebody who was trying to kill him. That is really something, hopefully nobody's trying to kill us in our lives, but if somebody has hurt you, how does your attitude towards the person change? Right? So that's what this story is. The moral of this Puranic story is really to show us that you can have all the scholarship and the wealth, but if it doesn't come with namrata, with humility, it's as good as not having it. Kasya vashe jagate tat priyahita vachanasya dharma niritas priyahita vachanasya dharma niritasya. So this kasya vashe jagad etat, under whose control is this world? This was very similar to verse 20, this is 27, where we saw kasya vashe praniganaha, under whose control are all human beings, who can command people effectively. And the answer in that earlier verse was Satya Priya Bhashinasya, the one who speaks truth, the one whose speech is pleasant, and who is Vinita, who is humble. Here it says Priya Hita Vachanasya, almost the same meaning, the one whose speech is humble and kind, and who is a Dharma Nirita, the one who is dharmic, who is committed to dharma. Such a person has the world under their control. Obviously, control, you have to give it a little bit of leeway. A person who's speaking the truth and who's pleasant, who doesn't cause harm, doesn't really control the world, but it shows that such a person is able to prosper in the world, not only for himself or herself, but pulls others along also. And there is, remember the four W's and the 2 H's that hit the Vakyam has to come along with that. One more story, and I think the beginning this class with a lot of stories. So there is a story of this wise woman, of an old woman who was, the story tells us the importance of words. What we speak matters, how we speak matters. So as every story, once upon a time, there was an old woman. She had healing powers. Her words had healing powers. And they had almost like predictive powers, which means whatever she said would come true. And she was very careful. She did not want to share this power with anybody else, obviously, because if it went into the wrong hands, a lot of adharma would happen. But a young man comes to her and he says, I'm very earnest, I really want to learn this power from you so that I can do a lot of good, just like you are doing a lot of good. She somehow got convinced that and she was also getting old, right? So she wanted to pass on this trait to somebody else. So she says, the power is not mine to give, meaning it's not something I own, it's something that I've been given, but I will teach you the secret to access it within yourself, as long as you agree to follow my instructions to the T. And he said, yes. What were the instructions? She gave him 3 scrolls. And she said, you have to follow the directions that are given in the scroll. So the first scroll was, the conditions were, the first scroll was to be opened at sunrise on the next morning. As soon as, and then he had to follow the instructions on that scroll. As soon as the instructions on the first scroll had been followed, the second scroll could be opened, and after the second scroll instructions were followed, the third scroll could be opened. So this young man thanks her, and he couldn't sleep the whole night because he's like so excited. He thanks her, he goes and waiting for sunrise, the sun has to rise before he could open the scroll. He gets up early morning, waits for sun at the break of sunrise, he opens the first scroll, and here is what he reads. You must climb to the top of the tallest mountain. Take with you 3 things. Enough food to satiate your hunger, a knife sharp enough to kill the fiercest lion, and a pillow filled with feathers, soft enough to ease the most troubled sleep. So he did exactly as the scroll said, and after many days and nights, he finally found a really tallest mountain. He climbs up, reaches the top of the tallest mountain. Obviously, it was very windy on the mountain. He opens the second seal because he's reached the top of the mountain. And the second scroll said, use the knife to cut open the pillow and allow the wind to scatter the feathers to the four corners of the earth. So obviously he's not using the pillow for sleeping. He does that, he cuts the pillow, and saw the wind, because it was windy, the wind takes the thousands of feathers all over, carries them away. And then he opens the third scroll, and here is what it reads. Now gather up each feather that the wind has taken from the pillow and bring it back safely to me. When you have succeeded in your quest, I will share with you my secret. Obviously, an impossible task for even Superman to do. So the young man was overwhelmed by this challenge, but he was sincere. So he went around the whole world, like the story says, in a year. He traveled, gathered as many feathers as he could. And after the end of a year, he comes back to the village where the old woman was to admit his failure to the woman. And when he comes there, he finds out that the woman has died. So he's really saddened. But he goes to pay his respect to the cemetery. He goes to the graveside, heartbroken, and he, instead of bringing, usually people take flowers when you go to the cemetery. Instead of taking flowers, he puts all the feathers, the few feathers he has gathered over the year, he puts it in a vase and keeps it by her graveside. As soon as he places the vase on her stone, a grave digger comes there and hands him a scroll and says and tells him that he was told to give the scroll to the first person who visited the grave with feathers as a gift. And the young man breaks the seal on the fourth scroll, and here is what it read. Like the feathers in your pillow spread by the wind, every word you utter goes out into the world, never to be returned. If you speak words of anger, despair, envy, and hate, they will cut through others like a sharp knife, and you may never be able to fully undo their effect. If you speak words of love, hope, appreciation, and kindness, priya, hita, satya, anudvegaha, you will never need to try. Your words will carry throughout the world like feathers in the wind, bringing rest to the weary, comfort to the sick, and hope to the downtrodden. So he hasn't learned the skill yet, right? This is a great message for all of us. But then he says, when you truly recognize that each word you speak has the power to cut like a knife or comfort like a feather, like a pillow, your word will be your wand, and that which you have been seeking will be yours. So in this sense, this verse is saying, Kasya Bashe Jagat Etat, who controls the world? The one who has these words and uses the words very wisely. Vidwan Manoharaka, Vidwan Manoharaka, Sat Kavita, Kavita, Bodha Vanita cha, Kam Nasprashati Vipattihi, Kam Nasprashati Vipattihi, Pravruddha Vachananuvartinam Dantam, Pravruddha Vachananuvartinam Dantam. Ka Manohara Vidwan. Ka Manohara, what captivates, what attracts or fascinates Vidwan. Vidwan here means a learned or a cultured person. And the two words are Sat Kavita. Sat means true, but here you can, Kavita is poetry, you could take it as a beautiful poetry. And why is poetry considered to be something that fascinates a cultured person? For most of us, at least for me, I have to be honest, I have no inkling of a poetry bone in me. So even if you explain the poetry, it will take me a long time to understand. Many of you, our brains, different parts of our brains are developed over our lifetime differently. So if you're exposed to a lot of art and people who play an instrument from very early on, that part of their brain gets developed a lot. But if you're good in math or logical, in logic, that part of the brain develops a lot. So why is poetry considered to be something that is very attracts a learned person or a cultured person? There are many art forms, and poetry is one of them. I'm trying to link this comparison to the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 elements that we know of, the Prithvi, Agni, Vayu, Jalam, and Akashaha. So if you consider different art forms, say sculpture. Sculpture uses gross materials like metal, clay, stone. So it's taking materials from the earth, Prithvi, and sometimes you need fire, Agni, to make a particular form. So it's a fairly gross form of art. It's of course a great art, Swamiji always says, with the Radha Krishna Murti, or even any of the Murtis on our altar, it's just a big block, right? It's a very skilled Shilpi or an artisan who has to carve out a feature of the deity from that piece of block. Not all of us have that skill. So from the gross, then you go to music. Music is less gross, only because it still uses sounds, and it uses instruments, sounds like Vayu and Akasha, sounds traveling in space. Then you go to prose. Prose is use of narration mainly to explain something very logically. So it uses, there is Jalam, flow, comparing it to one of the Mahabhutas, Pancha Mahabhutas. There has to be a flow, just like water flows. If you write a sentence and there is no logical flow in the sentence or between that sentence and the next sentence, it doesn't make sense to the reader. But poetry, on the other hand, uses language, it uses words, rhythms, metaphors, but not to prove something logically, but to bring out an emotion. So poetry is really, it's just much harder to do. So poetry, going from the grossest to the subtlest, somebody who writes poetry requires a very highly trained intellect, highly trained part of the brain. And somebody to appreciate that poetry also requires a very refined fine-tuning of their emotional and intellectual aspects. So that's why Sat Kavita, the Vidwan appreciates Sat Kavita. And the second word is Bodha Vanita. Vanita means a loving wife. Obviously, it's not talking about a learned or a cultured person fascinated by his loving wife. Here it's talking about Bodha Vanita. So Bodha, knowledge, is compared to a loving wife. But why? Why would you compare knowledge to a wife? Knowledge to that which is loved or desired. Why is knowledge compared? It's used to describe. So in ancient times, a marriage was for life. It's not the time and place to say whether that was a good thing or not a good thing. But just as a spouse is meant to be a constant presence, knowledge is something that stays with you throughout life. So that's why Bodha is compared to a Vanita, a loving wife, a faithful wife. And of course you can, even though Vanita means wife, you would in today's time and age, you would also take it to mean the husband or the partner. Of course, this verse presupposes that your marriage and your relationship is a perfect one, where the husband and wife or the two partners are always in sync. But an interesting thing that came to my mind is in so Vedic culture put a lot of emphasis on marriage. And a wife was called dharmacharini. So char means to walk, dharma, the one who walks along with the partner in performing dharma. And dharma in this word means rituals. So most rituals in the Hindu tradition cannot be performed by a person who's not married, by a brahmachari. There are certain rituals which some brahmacharis and grihasthas can do, vanaprasthas can do, but most of them required the presence of the wife. So a wife was called dharmacharini, a partner in the performance of rituals, but not just a life companion. So this was important, and also called sadharmini, the one who walks alongside the spouse on the path of dharma. So remember, the duty of in grihastha ashrama, in a householder life, the main duty, one of the big duties of a householder was to support society, which includes support the brahmacharis who didn't have the students, who didn't have a means of earning, to support sannyasis who had renounced everything, and vanaprasthas was like an intermediate retirement stage. So that's why Bodha Vanita pleases a learned or cultured person. And kam na sprashati vipattihi. Kam na sprashati, whom does vipattihi, disaster or calamity, not affect, not shake up, or not agitate, who remains untouched by difficulties or unpleasant situations in life? And the answer is a little surprising. It's a pravruddha vachana anuvartinam. Anuvru, one who serves or cares for or worships. Worships who? What? Vachana, the words of pravruddha, of the elders, of the wise ones. There was a big emphasis given on respect shown to elders in Vedic times. Even today in Indian culture, it's a very different culture in the US and in where age is, unfortunately, as you get older, you're less respected. And it's really sad, just because you don't have the capacity to contribute to society anymore doesn't mean you're useless. You've contributed all your life to society, to your family, and it's really a shame when we set aside elderly people, our parents, our whoever, grandparents, and not be taking care of them, not be even listening to what they have to say. And I heard someone say, so many times older people will repeat things, right? They are reliving the past. What else do they have to, as you grow older in your 80s, 90s, what do you have to look forward to? There's not much maybe you can do physically or mentally, but you have your memories. So you bring up those memories, and unfortunately, the caretakers or the children who don't have the value for that don't have the time. The younger generation is looking forward, so they are thinking of the future. The older generation is looking back. So the words of the wise one, of the elders, those who care for or worship, follow the wise of the elders, they are the ones who who remain untouched by unpleasant situations, and who are dantam. Dantam meaning who are restrained, who are patient, who have their sense controls who have their senses under their control. For somebody who's taking care, who's a caregiver of, say, somebody who has dementia or Alzheimer's, where they are constantly repeating themselves, it becomes rather cumbersome if you are the caretaker and you have to keep answering the same question again and again. And obviously, if you understand the science behind it, it's an illness, they're not doing it on purpose. But forget about dementia, somebody who, just an older person, who keeps telling you the same thing again and again. Most of the time, especially if it's our parents or our loved one, or even our spouses, most of the time, it doesn't even go in, right? You are not, most of the time a harsh word comes out, which is not needed. We go back to our story of doing the kind words, saying the kind words. So the one who is dantam, who is controlled in not only their speech, in control of all their senses, and this control dantam is needed not only for spiritual growth, but even in a worldly sense, even if you want to grow in a secular place. If you are at your job and you're constantly saying the same thing again and again to your office mate or your cubicle mate, they're going to tell you to shut up, and nobody's going to tolerate you. So learning to be restrained in our words, our actions, our deeds is very important for our growth. Kasmai spruhayati kamala, kasmai spruhayati kamala, tu analasachitaya niti vrittaya, tu analasachitaya niti vrittaya, tyajati cha kam sahasa, tyajati kam sahasa, dvija guru sura nindakaram, dvija guru sura nindakaram, chasalasyam, chasalasyam. So first part, kasmai kamala, who is, kamala here means, is a name for Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi. So who does goddess Lakshmi spruhayati? Spruha means literally mean to touch, but who, or to wish. Who does goddess Lakshmi wish, desire for? In other words, who does goddess Lakshmi bless? An alasa chittaya. So in the second half, an alasa. Alasa means lazy, inactive, or idle, and analasa, the one who is not inactive or lazy or idle, in chitta thought. So literally, analasa chitta is one whose thought is not wandering, not wasteful. So goddess Lakshmi blesses such a person, and who is niti vrittaya, vritta, whose vritta, conduct or behavior, is niti, just or dharmic. So does this mean that goddess Lakshmi does not bless anybody else? Obviously not, right? And if it were the case at Diwali time, most people would not be doing Lakshmi Puja when it comes to Diwali. Why? And goddess Lakshmi really, even though the verse is talking about whom does, even though goddess Lakshmi symbolizes wealth for most people, wealth has many different aspects, and it's actually in the there are 8 manifestations of goddess Lakshmi. Ashta Lakshmi, some of you might know this. Adi Lakshmi or Mahalakshmi, this is the first fundamental form of Lakshmi from which all the others originated. Dhana Lakshmi, Dhana, wealth. Obviously, money is important to live comfortably. Dhanya Lakshmi, goddess of dhanyam, grains or agriculture. Food is important for life. Gaja Lakshmi, this Lakshmi is symbolized with elephants, 2 elephants on either side. And this Lakshmi was worshipped for the prosperity or the wealth of a kingdom by kings. Santana Lakshmi, Santana means progeny or offspring, the importance of children. There are so many couples and who struggle with infertility problems, and children were considered wealth. Just considering from in an ancient world, in ancient agricultural society, children were needed, especially sons were needed to help the parents till the land and take care of the farms. So the children are important, our wealth. Veera Lakshmi, Veera means valor or courage, helps us face challenges. So having the courage and strength is a form of wealth. Vidya Lakshmi, of course, knowledge and wisdom. What are we trying to do here is gain this Vidya. We are trying to gain knowledge. And Vijaya Lakshmi, Vijaya means victory. In all the strifes in our life, in all the attempts, in everything we do, we wouldn't do it if we didn't expect to be successful, right? So Vijaya, getting success, Vijaya Lakshmi is prayed to for success. So all these Lakshmis symbolize the wealth in our life. But if you are lazy, alasa, if you're lazy, idle, just bumming around, do not have a job, how will you get wealth? If you don't put in the work, just the actual wealth, forget about children, family, success, victory. So to get Lakshmi's blessings, we need to be an-alasa. But obviously the work that we do needs to be keeping in dharma, keeping in line with dharma. So you say, okay, I want to not be lazy anymore. I want to get a job. I want to start working. And you start a business. You say, okay, I'm going to start a business. And you start a business dealing with chemical weapons and arms and gunfire and other weapons that can cause a lot of harm. Would you be blessed by Lakshmi? So blessings coming for adharmic activities. Obviously this verse is talking about niti vritta, the wealth that comes by doing dharmic activities. And the next halves, kam cha tyajati, cha, come and, kam tyajati. What does or who does Lakshmi, relating to the first half of the verse, tyajati, who does Lakshmi abandon sahasa, quickly or immediately? And there is a group of people, categories that so remember now, Lakshmi is symbolizing all the wealth, all the things, instead of calling it wealth, all the things that are important for our worldly and secular growth, spiritual and secular growth. So anything that we consider important for us to have peace and contentment is considered Lakshmi. So she quickly abandons who? Nindakaram, the one who slanders or curses. Who? Dvija. Dvija is another name for Brahmana. Literally, Dvija means born, twice born. And why is a Brahmana called twice born? Because the first birth of anybody is through their parents, from the mother. But in ancient times, a young boy at the age of 7 or 8 would have the upanayam. Actually, even nowadays, traditional families do that. Have the, I think in Hindi or Northern, they call it the Janeyu ceremony, Upanayanam or Upavita ceremony, where the boy is sent to the guru to study the Vedas. So it is like a second birth that the guru gives, and that's why a Brahmana is called a Dvija. Only after getting this, going through this Upanayanam ceremony, getting the blessings of the father and the guru, is the child allowed to start study of the Veda. So Dvija, the one who nindakaram, who curses or slanders a Brahmana. Guru, obviously somebody who slanders a guru, who talks badly of any guru. And I know there are many quote-unquote gurus out there who may not meet our standards, but let's give them the benefit of a doubt. Sura, Sura is gods, so one who slanders either of these categories, groups of people, and cha, sa, alasyam, alasa, so then along with one who is lazy, just keeping in line with the prior half of the word of the verse. And it's interesting to note that Dvija, Brahmana, is put in the same category as a guru and a sura, a god, because Brahmanas were the priests who did all the rituals, conducted the rituals in ancient times, but they were also the teachers who taught Vedas, and it was important for society. Kutra videyo vasaha, kutra videyo vasaha, sajjana nikate athava kashyam, sajjana nikate athava kashyam, kah pariharyo deshaha, kah pariharyo deshaha, vishunayuto lubdha bhupascha, vishunayuto lubdha bhupascha. So kutra vasaha, vidheyaha, where should vasa, living, be done? Where should one live? Obvious answer is in a home, but the answer given is sajjana nikate, in the vicinity of satjana, in the vicinity of dharmic people. Again, we've seen several verses where satsanga is considered one of the most important spiritual practices, being around like-minded people. Athava, or kashyam. Kashyam is Kashi. In Kashi, I think its older name was Varanasi or Banaras. Kashi literally means shining or the sun, and it represents. So why do people go to Kashi, and why is this verse saying live in Kashi? And there is a tradition that many Hindus would go and live in Kashi, especially as they're nearing their time of death. And there is a story, some of you I'm surely know of this. There is a Kashi Vishwanatha temple in Kashi, which is considered to be a Jyotirlinga. Linga is like an indicator or a sign or a formless sign of Jyoti, of light. And the story, of course, from the Puranas is that Lord Brahma and we always come back to these three main deities. So Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu at one time had an argument about who was more powerful. And yes, gods could also need a little ego boost. They have their own things going on. They go to Lord Shiva to settle the dispute. So what Shiva does is he becomes an infinite blazing linga, a light, and goes up into the sky, goes down below, and he tells Brahma and Vishnu, whoever finds the edge of the light will be the most, is considered to be most powerful. So Vishnu goes in the form of a boar into the earth, and Brahma takes the form of a swan and flies into the heavens. Neither of them can find the edge of this light. And Vishnu comes back, he admits the truth, and he tells Shiva, I couldn't find it. But Brahmaji, however, comes back, tells a little lie. And he says, yeah, I found it. And he uses this ketaki flower, as he's flying, this ketaki flower as a witness to his having found the edge of this light. And Shiva, of course, knows that Brahma is telling a lie. And for this, the story is, for this reason, there are very few temples dedicated to Lord Brahma. And the ketaki flower is never offered in temples because of this. I don't know how much truth there is. Take it with a grain of salt. This is the story. But people go to Kashi to spend the end of their life because the belief is this light, this Jyotirlinga, represents knowledge, Shiva's knowledge, the ultimate knowledge. And the hope is, at least at the end of life, you get the knowledge that helps you become free. And kaha deshaha pariharyaha. Kaha deshaha, what place? Pariharyaha, what is to be given up? What place is to be avoided? Pishuna yutaha, that which is connected with or occupied by whom? By Pishuna. Pishuna means a backbiting, treacherous person, literally, a dharmic person. So obviously, there is an English saying, right? Company finds something. I'm blanking out on the English thing. So who you keep company with affects you. your thinking gets affected by, especially as we are younger. When we are younger, we are more susceptible to, we are more impressionable by what other people say and other people tell us. So if you're around people who are adharmic, that's kind of going to be rubbing off on you. And cha lupta bhupaha cha, bhupaha, lupta bhupaha, a greedy ruler or a greedy king. Avoid such places. Of course, in current day politics, I'm not sure where we can go. There is a story, a verse in the Hita Upadesha, which says, compares the company of a wicked or an adharmic person like a piece of charcoal. If it is hot, if you hold the charcoal when it's hot, it burns you. If you hold it when it is cold, it still blackens your hand. So these adharmic people are like this piece of charcoal. Associating with them is a lose-lose situation. Okay, I think we can do one more verse. Kena ashochya purushaha, kena ashochya purushaha, pranatakalat-trena dhira vibhavena, pranatakalat-trena dhira vibhavena, iha bhuvane kashochyaha, iha bhuvane kashochyaha, satyapi vibhave, satyapi vibhave nayo data, nayo data. So, kena ashochyaha purushaha. Purushaha, kena ashochyaha. By what means or how can a person, does a person should not grieve or should not worry? When does a person not need to worry? And it says, pranata kalatrena. Pranata kalatra. Kalatra means a wife, a good wife, a respectful wife. Pranata kalatrena. And of course, we have to include husband. Remember, this text was written by a male, so obviously talking about a wife. If a person has a good spouse, let's just take it like that, he or she does not need to worry. Not having a good marital relationship can really make one's life miserable, if you're married, of course, or if you have a partner. Not having a good relationship can really make your life miserable. Remember, this partner is supposed to be one who accompanies you through your journey of life. And if that relationship is not good, it can be living hell for both partners. In the Bhartrhari, a Niti Shatakam of Bhartrhari, there is a shloka which says one needs to have done a lot of punya, a lot of good karma to get 3 relationships. And what is the to get true relationships in three aspects. So yaha prinayet sucharitaihi pitaram saputraha. So yaha putraha, a true son. Yaha prinayet sucharitaihi, a true son who prinayet, who pleases pitaram, who pleases his father, sucharitaihi, with his good character. So a true son is one who pleases his father with his good character. Yad bhartru eva hitam ichhati tat kalatram. Kalatram, a true, even though it means wife, we'll take it a true spouse, is yad bhartuhu eva hitam ichhati, who wishes the welfare of the other partner, of the spouse. Tan mitram apadi sukhecha sa mitriyam yat. So yat mitram, a true friend, is apadi sukhecha samakriyam, is one who remains alike, who stands by your side, apadi, at times of difficulty, and sukhecha, and at good times. Etatrayam jagati punyakrito labhante. Punyakritaha labhante. So these 3, etatrayam, a true son, a true spouse, a true friend, are extremely rare to get. You need to have done a lot of punya. And the second word, dhira vibhavena, is one who is steady or constant. There's sufficient wealth. One who has sufficient wealth obviously doesn't have to worry about a living. Iha bhuvane, iha bhuvane kaha shocyaha. Iha bhuvane, in this world, kaha shocyaha, who deserves our sympathy or pity. Yah satyapi vibhave na yaha dataha. Yaha, the one who, satyapi, sati api, even though being what? Vibhave, even though being wealthy or rich, na data, does not give, is miserly. We all know we cannot take our wealth with us when we go. Of course, you want to write it out for your children, grandchildren, all that is fine. I thought I will bring this out in case some of you may not know. In the Hindu samskara of the final rites, the funeral ritual, the priest will place some coins or some pieces of gold on the body that is going into be into the burning, into the fire. And this represents, so what happens after the cremation is over, the coins or the gold remains back. And it's really very telling to say that you can't really take anything with you when you die. And it's very different from the Egyptian form of mummification, where a lot of the wealth and everything is buried along with the person who's died in the pyramid, because the symbolism is quite different than what the Hindu samskara has. So give your wealth away, dhanam, lot of dhanam. Okay. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritangamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.